There are crimes that shock people because of their brutality. And then there are crimes that cut even deeper, because the people behind them were once called family. On July 29, 2013, police entered a home in the quiet town of Wilmar, Minnesota, where neighbors said one of the kindest women in the community lived. It was the kind of house no one would look at twice. Neat, familiar, safe, the kind of place where people assume nothing truly terrible could happen. Minutes later, officers found the body of Lila Warwick in the basement. She was lying on the cold floor, barefoot, covered in stab wounds, and with a handcuff still fastened to one wrist. At first glance, it looked like the work of a violent intruder. But investigators would soon uncover a truth far more disturbing. Lila had not been killed by strangers. Her death had been set in motion by the very people she had spent years loving, forgiving, and trying to protect. Lila Warwick was the kind of woman everyone seemed to know. Deeply religious, compassionate, gentle, she dedicated her life to her family, her church, and helping others. She sang in the church choir, worked with children, volunteered in the community, and if someone needed help, Lila showed up. She was the kind of person people trusted without question. The kind of person who made others feel safe just by being there. To the people around her, she was kindness in human form. To her grandchildren, she was the loving grandmother who never stopped giving. To her family, she was the foundation that held everything together. She was the person everyone called when they needed advice, when they needed comfort, when they needed someone to care. And she always did. But beneath that peaceful image, cracks had been forming in the family for years. Long before the murder, Lila had lost her husband Robert to a sudden heart attack. He was only 44. His death shattered the family, but no one seemed to take it harder than their son, Kent. After his father died, Kent began to change. He grew distant, angry, withdrawn. Then eventually, he disappeared from the family's life almost completely. Years passed. Then one day, without warning, Kent came back. He returned with a wife named Jennifer and 3 children, acting as if he wanted a fresh start. And Lila, like many mothers would, welcomed him back without hesitation. No demands, no bitterness, no long speech about the years he had lost. She opened the door and let him in. But the reunion did not last. Just weeks later, Kent vanished again, this time abandoning his wife and children. And once again, Lila stepped in. She helped Jennifer. She supported the grandchildren. She opened her home and became the stable force in their lives when their own father refused to be. She did what she had always done. She filled the empty space other people left behind. No one could have imagined that this devotion to family would one day cost her everything. On the morning of July 29th, Lila stopped answering her phone. That alone alarmed everyone who knew her. She never missed church meetings, never ignored calls, never disappeared without explanation. She lived with structure, with duty, with routine. When she suddenly went silent, people noticed immediately. Concerned relatives contacted police for a welfare check. When officers arrived, everything outside looked normal. Her car was in the garage. No signs of forced entry. No broken windows. No obvious disturbance. Family members gave police the garage code. And the moment officers stepped inside, they knew something was terribly wrong. Drops of blood marked the floor. A trail led from the garage into the kitchen. Bloody paper towels were scattered across the counters, as if someone had tried to clean up in a hurry but had either panicked or given up. Then officers reached the basement and found Lila. The medical examiner quickly confirmed the obvious: she had died from multiple stab wounds to the chest and neck. But something about the crime scene felt wrong for a simple robbery. Blood was found near the computer. A banking website was open on the screen. A bloodstained check lay on the floor. Investigators concluded that before she died, Lila had been forced to access her bank account and attempt to write money over to her attacker. But despite the financial motive, this crime felt personal. Too much rage, too much violence, too much cruelty. The scene suggested not just theft, but domination, fear, control. Someone had wanted money, yes, but someone had also wanted power over her in her final moments. Police began by looking at those closest to her. One of the first people questioned was her grandson, Robbie Warwick. The same grandson who had helped police get into the house. And the same grandson whose name relatives began mentioning more and more. According to family members, Robbie had changed in recent years. He had once been close to Lila. But over time, he became involved with drugs, bad influences, and constant conflict. Lila had tried to help him, tried to guide him, tried to save him. She may have been one of the last people in his life still trying. But eventually, their relationship fractured. Police suddenly had a possible motive. Yet Robbie's alibi checked out. He had been at work during the murder. The investigation stalled. For a moment, it seemed like the case had hit a wall. The crime scene was brutal, but the path forward was murky. It was clear that whoever killed Lila had either known the house well or been told exactly how to move through it. The attacker knew enough to get inside, knew enough to force her to the computer, knew enough to search for money. That kind of familiarity was hard to ignore. Then someone walked into the station and changed everything. A young man named Jay Hooker told detectives, "I know who killed Lila Warwick." At first, detectives were skeptical. After major crimes, people often come forward claiming to know more than they do. Rumors spread, stories grow. Small-town fear has a way of creating false confidence. But within minutes, investigators realized Jay was different. He named a suspect, Brock Jankemeyer, a 19-year-old friend of Robbie's, a troubled young man already known to police. Then Jay made an even more shocking claim. He said Brock had confessed to him personally. According to Jay, the day after the murder, Brock drove him past Lila's house, pointed at it, and calmly said, "I killed her." That alone was alarming. But what truly shook investigators was what came next. Jay began describing details of the murder that had never been released publicly. He said the killer had hidden inside the house, that the attack began in the basement, that the victim had been restrained, that she was forced to access her bank account. Details only the killer, or someone very close to him, could know. Then another witness came forward. This one brought a cell phone recording. On that audio, Brock could be heard describing the murder in chilling detail. No panic, no remorse, no emotion, just a calm explanation of how he killed an elderly woman. And if you're still watching, take a second to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, what do you think is more disturbing in a case like this? The actual killer, or the person close to the victim who helped make it possible? That was enough. Police arrested Brock. At first, he denied everything. Claimed Lila had given him the check willingly for helping around the house. Claimed he was being framed. Claimed he had just gotten caught up in something that looked worse than it was. But when detectives laid out the evidence, the recording, the witnesses, the banking records, the physical evidence, Brock stopped talking. Then after a pause, he said, "Fine. I did it." And then he told them everything. He said he entered Lila's house before she came home. He knew where she kept the spare key. He hid in the basement and waited for hours. When Lila came inside, he attacked. He threatened her, handcuffed her, tried to force compliance. But Lila fought back, so Brock escalated. He choked her, cut her hands, threatened her life, dragged her to the computer, forced her to log into her bank account, demanded she write him a check. But Lila was bleeding heavily. Her hands were shaking. She could barely hold the pen. And then Brock lost control. He pulled out a knife and stabbed her. Again, and again, and again. Later, he admitted he did not even check if she was dead. He simply left her there to bleed out. When detectives asked what he felt in that moment, Brock shrugged. No guilt, no fear, no remorse. But even that was not the most horrifying part. Because according to Brock, the idea had not been his. He claimed the plan came from Robbie, Lila's own grandson. Brock said Robbie told him his grandmother had money, told him where the spare key was hidden, and insisted she could not be left alive because she would know who was behind it. In Brock's version, Robbie had not just handed him information, he had handed him permission. At first, Brock claimed he refused. Then eventually, he agreed to the robbery. And later, to the murder. After the murder, Brock left. But later that same day, he returned with Robbie. Together, they located Lila's safe, took it, and fled. Police soon recovered the safe, along with Brock's blood-stained clothing, and more physical evidence tying both men to the crime. Robbie was arrested shortly after. He tried distancing himself from the murder, claimed he never thought it would go that far, claimed Brock was only supposed to scare her. But investigators did not believe him. The evidence showed otherwise. He helped plan the crime. He knew about the attack beforehand. And he helped cover it up afterward. For Lila's family, the truth was devastating. They could almost understand how a stranger might commit such brutality. It would still be horrific, but at least it would make emotional sense. Evil from outside is easier to imagine than betrayal from within. But accepting that her own grandson had helped orchestrate her murder, that was nearly impossible. The woman who fed him, supported him, loved him, and cared for him, had been betrayed by the very person she spent years trying to help. Brock pleaded guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Robbie accepted a plea deal. He also received life, with the possibility of parole after 30 years. The case shocked far more than just Minnesota, because it shattered one of the most dangerous illusions people cling to. The belief that being good will protect you from evil. Lila was a good person. She loved deeply, she forgave, she helped, she sacrificed for family. And still, none of that saved her. Because perhaps the hardest truth in this story is this. This murder did not begin with sudden rage. It did not begin with hatred. It began with greed, with moral decay, with the slow death of empathy inside people she trusted. Sometimes the worst evil does not come from strangers. Sometimes it sits across from you at the dinner table. Sometimes it smiles at you across the holidays. Sometimes it hugs you goodbye. And sometimes, it calls you family.